The evening air carried that perfect balance between warmth and cool, the kind that made a person want to linger outside. I was slouched on my little balcony with a mug of coffee that had long since gone cold. Not that I minded. The cup was more an excuse to sit there, staring at the restless glow of the city below. Neon signs blinked, headlights traced slow arcs down crowded streets, and every so often a siren wailed in the distance. It was one of those rare stretches where nothing demanded my attention. No phone buzzing, no emails screaming for replies, no chores that couldn't wait. Just me, lukewarm coffee, and the hypnotic pulse of a city that seemed alive in its own way. I exhaled slowly, letting myself relax into the silence. Then the sky tore open. At first I thought it was a plane in trouble. A streak of fire carving across the stars, trailing sparks as it fell. But it was too fast, too deliberate, and the angle was all wrong. The object slammed down somewhere beyond the edge of the city, the sound carrying even this far. A deep, rolling boom that rattled the glass in my window. I nearly spilled what was left of my coffee as I shot to my feet. "Well," I muttered, "so much for a quiet night. Curiosity has always been my downfall." Instead of staying put like any sane person, I grabbed a flashlight, shoved my feet into sneakers, and made my way down the street. The city was buzzing now, people pointing skyward, phones raised to capture shaky videos. Most folks turned back after a block or two, deciding the authorities would deal with it. I kept walking. Something in me needed to see for myself. The closer I got, the more obvious it became that this wasn't some simple debris fall. The crash site glowed faintly, a crater steaming as if the ground itself had been scorched. I stopped at the edge, heart hammering, unsure whether to be amazed or terrified. Then I saw her. Amid the wreckage, half buried in twisted metal that definitely wasn't from any earthly aircraft, lay a figure. Small, delicate, with hair that shimmered silver even in the dim light. Her skin was pale with an almost luminescent quality, and when she stirred, her eyes flicked open, glowing faintly, not in reflection, but from within. She tried to rise but collapsed again, clearly injured. Instinct overrode caution. I scrambled down the crater's slope, slipping on loose soil, and crouched beside her. Hey, don't move," I said, my voice shaking more than I wanted it to. "You're hurt." She looked at me, her gaze sharp and uncomprehending, then softened with what I could only read as exhaustion. Her lips parted, and she whispered something in a language that carried a rhythm I'd never heard before. The sound was haunting, like music half-remembered. I had no idea what she'd said, but I understood enough. She wasn't from here, and my quiet evening had just been obliterated. For a moment I just crouched there in the crater, frozen between awe and panic. A part of me screamed that I should call someone, police, fire department, NASA maybe, but looking at her, trembling and struggling for breath, I couldn't do it. Not yet. If the wrong people found her first, I doubted they'd treat her kindly. So I did the only reckless thing my brain could think of. I helped her up. She was lighter than I expected, her frame delicate, though she winced whenever I shifted her weight. Her strange garment, half uniform, half armor, was scorched in places, revealing faintly glowing lines across her skin that looked less like injuries and more like circuitry woven into her flesh. I didn't let myself stare too long. With one arm slung over my shoulders, we stumbled out of the crater, me half dragging her down side streets to avoid attention. A couple of pedestrians gave us strange looks, but in a city this weird, people minded their own business. By the time we reached my apartment, I was sweating and out of breath. Inside, I eased her onto the couch. She collapsed into the cushions like a marionette with its strings cut, eyes fluttering shut. For a terrifying moment I thought she'd stopped breathing, but then her chest rose slowly, steadily. I stood there, hands on my knees, gasping for air. "Well," I panted, "congratulations, you're officially my strangest houseguest." She murmured something in her language, a soft, lilting sound, then shifted uncomfortably. My first instinct was first aid. I fetched a blanket, draped it over her, then filled a glass of water and set it on the table. She sniffed it suspiciously before sipping, her throat moving in delicate swallows. Okay, that's a start, I said. Water, universal language. Her glowing eyes fixed on me, curious but cautious. She pointed at me, lips moving carefully. Human. I blinked, startled. Yeah, human. That's me. I tapped my chest. Human. She repeated it slowly, the syllables strange on her tongue. Then she tapped her own chest. Elira. I smiled despite the chaos. Elira, nice to meet you. I guess introductions are intergalactic after all. My stomach growled then, loud and ridiculous. Elira tilted her head in alarm, as if the sound were some internal warning system. I laughed, shaking my head. Not an emergency, just hunger. I rummaged through the kitchen and found the universal cure for bad nights. Pizza leftovers. I warmed a couple slices, brought them over, and placed one in her hands. She eyed it like I'd handed her a weapon. It's food, I assured her. Trust me, it's good. She sniffed, took a tentative bite, and froze. Her luminous eyes widened in shock, then softened into something like wonder. Slowly, carefully, she devoured the rest, as though tasting joy for the first time. Watching her, I realized something profound. She wasn't just surviving here. She was experiencing something entirely new, and I, of all people, had given it to her. Elira leaned back against the couch, finishing the last crumbs of pizza with a kind of reverence I hadn't expected. Her glowing eyes closed for a moment as if she were memorizing the taste. When she looked at me again, there was something different in her gaze. Less suspicion, more curiosity. I raised my slice in a mock toast. Welcome to Earth's finest cuisine. Not exactly interstellar, but it does the job. She tilted her head, lips curving into the faintest suggestion of a smile. That tiny change startled me more than the crash itself. I realized then that under all her strangeness, she wasn't so alien in her expressions. She looked tired, relieved, and maybe even amused, things I could understand. The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. She pointed at random objects around the room, asking soft questions in her halting attempt at English. Light? She said, gesturing at the lamp. Light? I confirmed, flicking it on and off. She repeated it, her voice gentle, almost musical. She tried another word. Couch. Her accent twisted it into couch. Close enough, I said with a grin. We went on like that for a while, a game of pointing and naming. It reminded me of how kids learn to speak. But she wasn't a child. She was sharp, determined, absorbing every word as though language itself was survival. Eventually, though, her gaze drifted to the window. Beyond the glass, the city lights pulsed, distant sirens echoing faintly. She pressed her palm against the pane, eyes suddenly distant. You? Home, she whispered slowly, searching for words. Then, with a sadness that needed no translation, me not. The weight of her loneliness hit me hard. She wasn't just lost. She was cut off. Whatever ship or crew she'd come from, they weren't here. And if the crash was as bad as it looked, they might not even know she'd survived. Hey, I said gently, leaning forward. We'll figure something out. You're not stuck forever. She turned back, studying me as if trying to measure the truth in my words. After a long pause, she nodded once, slowly. Then she mimed a motion, 2 fingers tapping her wrist, then pointing skyward. Took me a second to get it. A signal, I guessed. You need to call your people. Her eyes lit faintly, and she repeated the word carefully. Signal. I rubbed my chin. All right, a signal. But let me warn you, our tech is more Wi-Fi than warp drive. If you need something stronger, we'll have to improvise. She didn't understand all of it, but the word signal was enough. For the first time, she looked hopeful. The night stretched on, but neither of us moved to end it. I sat with my lukewarm coffee, she with her glowing eyes and quiet resolve. We were strangers from different worlds, sitting in a cluttered living room, sharing food and words as though it were the most natural thing. And somehow it was By midnight, the city had quieted, though its lights still shimmered like restless stars on the ground. Inside my apartment, the room felt smaller somehow, as if the presence of my strange guest had shifted the air. Elira paced slowly, her silver hair catching the glow of the lamp, her expression focused and heavy. She finally stopped and tapped her wrist again, then pointed at the sky. "Signal," she said firmly, her voice steadier now. I nodded. "All right, let's see what we can rig." My laptop, an old ham radio set I'd inherited from my grandfather, and a mess of wires became our makeshift comms hub. I wasn't sure what good it would do, but Elira crouched beside me, studying everything with intensity. She guided my hands at times, moving a dial here, flipping a switch there, her gestures precise. It felt oddly like a collaboration, two puzzle solvers working across a gulf of language. After nearly an hour, the air in the room shifted. A low hum vibrated through the equipment, sharper than any sound I'd heard from it before. Elira straightened, eyes glowing brighter, and pressed her hand against the radio. A tone echoed, deep and resonant, carrying into the night. She whispered something in her language, short, urgent, almost like a prayer. The sound wasn't meant for me. It was meant for whoever might still be out there listening. When the hum faded, she slumped back, drained but relieved. She turned to me, her voice soft. "They hear." I exhaled, leaning back against the wall. "Good. Then you won't be stuck here forever." But saying it left an unexpected ache in my chest. Elira studied me for a long time, her luminous eyes filled with emotions I couldn't name. Finally, she reached out, her fingers brushing mine in a gesture that felt both alien and achingly human. Thank you, maybe, or a goodbye already forming. We didn't speak much after that. Words weren't needed. She sat beside me on the couch, silent but present, her gaze occasionally flicking to the sky as if waiting for an answer. I sipped what was left of my cold coffee, wondering how a single night could feel like it had rewritten my entire life. As dawn crept in, painting the city in pale light, a faint vibration rattled the glass of my window. Elira stiffened, then rose. She turned to me, her silver hair catching the morning sun. "Home," she whispered, and though her voice trembled, her eyes shone with certainty. I stood, words caught in my throat. All I managed was a quiet, "Guess this is it, huh?" She gave the smallest nod, then touched her chest. "Elira."
He touched me na.
Human. For the first time, her lips curved into a true smile, warm, fleeting, unforgettable. Then she turned toward the balcony, where light shimmered faintly in the sky, beckoning. When she was gone, the apartment felt impossibly empty. My coffee was still cold, my city still buzzing awake, but everything had changed. Because somewhere out there, among the stars, someone named Elira now knew the taste of pizza, the word human, and the kindness of a stranger who'd once been sitting alone with lukewarm coffee. And somehow that was enough.